So a very warm welcome to this official Danish side event at UNFCCC on moving beyond oil and gas, leadership for a managed just phase out of oil and gas production. My name is Thomas Anker Christensen. I'm the climate envoy of Denmark, and I'm here to introduce the Minister for Climate, Energy and Utilities, the acting minister, I have to say, because we have a caretaker government in Denmark right now, Mr. Dan Jørgensen. Dan, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The Stone Age did not end because the world ran out of stone. And in the same way, we will not get to a carbon neutral world because we will run out of oil. Truth of the matter is that if we are to prevent catastrophic climate change, most of the oil reserves that we know about now needs to stay below ground. Dear all, welcome to this very important discussion. Last year at COP26 we launched the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance, BOGA. We were extremely pleased with the interest and the support that we got and that we have gotten in the following months and year. When we launched this alliance, we stepped forward to show the way for the end of the fossil fuel era. As we said at the time, progress depends on bold action. That certainly remains true. Over the past year, our climate leadership has been tested in many ways. But BOGA's mission is more relevant than ever. As we stand here today, 1 year on, Russia's unprovoked and unjustified invasion of Ukraine has transformed global energy markets. The ripple effects continue to be felt in every part of the globe. Soaring oil and gas prices are driving inflation and the cost of living worldwide. In BOGA, we recognize that governments have a responsibility to ensure reliable and affordable energy for their populations. Let me be clear. We are not calling for any sudden disruption of energy supplies, but we must equally recognize that the energy crisis is driven by the dependency on fossil fuels. The risk associated with oil and gas have been exposed like never before. On a tragic backdrop, it is evident that BOGA stands for climate action, energy stability, and national security. These are mutually reinforcing. In the face of the current crisis, it is thus even more important than ever that we accelerate our transition away from oil and gas in favor of a more sustainable future. In spite of the headwinds we face, BOGA and its members have made strong progress in the last year. You will hear much more about this in today's event. In my own country, Denmark, we have reaffirmed our world-leading commitment to end oil and gas production by 2050. It might sound like an easy decision, but I can assure you that it wasn't. When we made the decision, we were the biggest oil producer in the EU, but we decided nonetheless to put an end to all future licensing rounds, to cancel them, and to put an end date of all extraction of oil and gas in 2050. And in response to the crisis, we increased our green ambitions across the board, from offshore wind and onshore renewables to biogas and district heating. Several of our BOGA partners have shown the way in implementing BOGA commitments. Portugal adopted a new climate law that prohibits granting new concessions for oil and gas. Quebec and Sweden have both taken bold steps enacting landmark bans on oil and gas extraction on their territories. California has passed a series of laws which will not only protect communities from oil drilling, but also accelerate the state's transition to clean energy. And France is at work enacting legislation to enshrine a ban on overseas public finance on fossil fuels. I think that deserves a round of applause. So, we have come a long way, but obviously we must keep going. Today, we reiterate our call on all countries and governments to join our mission for a managed phase-out of oil and gas production. As you will hear in our event today, some governments are already answering this call. New leaders are stepping up to the plate, and I'm sure more will follow over the coming months and years. The momentum behind oil and gas supply-side action must accelerate. In BOGA, we are not only generating momentum and leadership by example, we also recognize that oil and gas-dependent economies in Africa and across the Global South require our support for alternative development pathways. That is why BOGA is working with the international community to mobilize support for long-term structural economic transitions. We're acting on our commitment to a just transition, and we have a very exciting announcement on this in our second panel discussion today. That's what they call a cliffhanger, ladies and gentlemen. Friends, the developments this past year have made the benefits of the clean energy transition clearer than ever. Not only will it save our planet, create jobs, and lead to falling energy prices, it will also enhance our energy security. But the transition will not happen by itself, nor will it happen overnight. It will require bold policies to set a clear direction of travel, to attract the necessary investments, and support workers and communities adversely affected by this development. That is exactly what BOGA is focused on achieving. That is why we're here today, and I thank you again for joining us. I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And the program now continues with the two moderated panels. I will moderate the first one, and the head of the BOGA Secretariat, Sean Bradley, will be in charge of the second. In the first one, we will talk to developed country leaders, and in the second one, focusing more on developing countries. And Minister, you announced a cliffhanger for the second panel, but I can also say to everybody here present, we will have good announcements in both the first and the second panel. With no further ado, let's move into the first panel, where I would ask the following to join us on the stage. Laurence Tubiana, CEO of the European Climate Foundation, Minister Benoit Charette, the Minister of Environment from Quebec, Duarte Cordeiro, the Minister for Environment and Climate Action of Portugal, Stéphane Crouzat, the Climate Ambassador of France, and Jay Inslee, the Governor of Washington State. While you make your way to the state, I would also say that as a preface here, of course, we are focused now on the BOGA initiative, but as everybody will also have noticed, there is a conversation now at the COP on the role of oil and gas in the negotiations. And this was kicked off by the Indian comments last week on whether we should have all fossil fuels phased down mentioned in the cover decision. And this is maybe something that the panelists could also reflect upon, what they think about that proposition. I will move to the end of the panel, which I will moderate. Thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, I would kick off with introducing Laurence Toubiana, the CEO of the European Climate Foundation, and as you all know, the lead negotiator for the Paris Agreement for the government of France at COP21. Let's dive straight into it, Laurence. BOGA was launched a year ago at COP26, as mentioned by Minister Jørgensen. But the world has changed a lot since then, not least the energy markets and the geopolitical situation. How do the events of the past year's war with Russia, Russia's war in Ukraine, the rising fossil fuel prices, the cost of living crisis change the challenge of phasing out oil and gas production? What does it look like from your chair? Please take the floor.
Thank you, Thomas. And what a relief to see so many people for that discussion. When we have so many people working for oil and gas company all over the place in this COP. So I can tell it's really a relief to see that there is energy to say, well, that's not the solution. Oil and gas are not the decarbonization solution of the future. But it's so incredible that they can say that when, there is no doubt. Even as you know, the International Energy Agency has been super clear, and Fatih Birol, who is not an environmental activist, is saying now all this has to stay. This oil and gas reserve has to stay where they are. So, of course, as the Danish minister said, the aggression of Russia on Ukraine has destabilized a lot the trend, which at least in the European sphere, was quite clear. We were going for 55%. I recognize now we want to go further than that for 2030. And this has been a shock. And we are still, in my view, of course, we didn't reassess totally the new Green Deal, not at all. But there is, of course, a doubt, what do we do on the short term? And what are the choices we are making in the short term will not and lock us in, finally, the dependence on fossil fuel. And of course, maybe they will come from other sources, this gas from US or North Africa or somewhere, or Africa, but that will be still a dependency on fossil fuel. And so that's a worry we have today. Governments, of course, are feeling an enormous pressure to get energy as cheap as possible, when, of course, the market price are skyrocketed, and because mostly of the structure of the electricity markets in Europe. And in a way, even if renewable energy have been crucial to save money for Europe, that was a big savings, that all the renewable energy supply has been really saving all the dollars and the euros we have been spending in imports. And in a way, what is really incredible these days is to be dependent for our energy security from autocratic regime that can decide whatever they want, what will be the future of Europe energy. So it cannot continue, and I think the message is going through. Now we are talking of energy security and renewable energy as a peace project, and I think that's very important for the future of Europe. But we have to recognize that we have sent mixed signals, in particular, in a way, changing the taxonomy at the last moment to introduce gas as in energy transition, even in very strict conditions, but nevertheless. And that's why BOGA is absolutely a vital initiative. We should not be confused about the direction of travel, and the direction of travel is not long-term, it's short-term. We have to get rid about fossil fuel as soon as possible. And that's why BOGA has to really be a strong focus on our, in a way, discussion. I do think that it was interesting, of course, to listen to the Indian Environment Minister, not a particularly soft negotiator, we remember last year in Glasgow, saying, well, if you want to phase down or phase out coal, why not talk about all fossil fuels? It may have been a tactical move, a game, but it's a good game. I think we should encourage him to go beyond that, to just, yes, we take you, we support you, and I see some countries that have immediately come to support his point of view. We should be talking about that. In Paris, I can tell it was impossible to have that. We tried many formulas, it never went. But now it is possible because of this issue about energy security. And we know that the dash for gas, including, in my view, mostly useless LNG capacity, building LNG capacity we don't need. Anyways, they will not respond to the short-term crisis. And this will be a risk for the 1.5 goal. So consistency and science-based policy needed at home as well as abroad. And European policymakers should recognize that this energy security challenge is a short term, and it is a short term, as you have said, Dave, but only if they are successful in the clean energy agenda. That's why we need to increase the target for 2030 for renewable energy in the energy mix. Of course, we have issues for a number of countries that, for their fiscal space, need to exploit their oil and gas resources, are asking for that. And that's why it's tricky for France, for example, to deny support for Senegal, as an example, to help Senegal invest in this oil and gas exploitation and exports. But I think we have to offer the alternative if we want to be heard, and if we want not to, in a way, corner countries that, again, need investment and resources to go for this transition. And finally, I would say that the success of this initiative, of course, will be judged not only to capacity to convince more and more countries, but how this will help countries that are dependent on fossil fuel to really answer some of their tough questions they are facing now, to transition away in a realistic way from oil and gas. And if we don't couple the solidarity, the investment elements together with a very neat, net positioning about we have to go beyond oil and gas, I think we never be understood by these countries. And I think at that particular moment for Europe, it's absolutely a crucial issue. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Laurence, and thank you also for thank you for your leadership with the Paris Agreement, but also for framing BOGA in a way as a vanguard of countries that are now continuing your work in now getting the fossil fuels onto the agenda, onto the global agenda, and eventually also into our COP agenda. And this despite of the geopolitical situation. And maybe that's a good segue to Minister Jørgensen from Quebec. You are from a sub-national member of BOGA, Minister, but your government in Quebec, you became the first jurisdiction in North America to ban petroleum exploration and production within its territory. And that is, in this geopolitical context, a really remarkable step, which included the revocation of exploration and production licenses. Can you explain to us how you came to this decision, what the reaction has been, especially in this context? Thank you.
Well, thank you. Tout d'abord, bonjour tout le monde, un plaisir d'être avec vous. But let's say what means BOGA first for Quebec. It's, in a way, a way of society. the science is pretty clear. We have to begin to phase out fossil fuels. So if we want to follow the science, we have to have an agenda for that, and BOGA for us was the perfect timing to make this huge engagement last year. Our premier was present at the COP26, so he made this clear engagement at that time, and few months after, we presented a bill in Quebec saying that when the bill will be adopted, we will stop exploring and exploiting fossil fuels. But not only that, because we had a lot of exploration sites in Quebec also. We had a lot of permits also, almost a little bit less than 170 permits. So we had to revoke these permits. So that's what we did. We did adopt the law. It's now an official law. And we have also planned money to restore the sites that were drilled to make sure that there's no other emissions. We had also to find a way to compensate those who bought these permits, because they did buy them in a legal system. So we had to think about all this, and that's what we did. By saying that, I won't tell no lie, we still use fossil fuel, but it's a good way to say we have to be less and less year after year dependent from these energies. So what that means that we have to be innovative by developing renewable energies, and that's also what we did with a plan of almost $8 billion for the 5 coming years. So BOGA, well, it's a way to emulate together after the bill, after the plan that we have to realize, but a necessary step if we want to follow the science. So I really enjoyed the leadership around this table this afternoon, and Quebec will be very pleased to play its role to make sure this alliance stay strong in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your leadership. And it goes to the at subnational level. We'll hear more about that in a few minutes, but also that there is a strength in numbers, that by joining BOGA, governments that have that ambition to start exploring what a phase-out could look like, they will gain comfort by actually being amongst peers in this. And that brings me to the next speaker, which is the Minister from Portugal, Minister Cordeiro. You adopted a new ambitious climate law at the end of last year, and that sets you on course to climate neutrality by 2050. And that law also prohibits new concessions of oil and gas in your country. And that means that today we are very pleased to announce that Portugal is moving from being an associate member of BOGA to being a core member, and we really welcome you in the core. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to congratulate my colleague from Denmark for organizing this meeting, but also with Costa Rica for the significant efforts of launching and managing BOGA initiative. It's also very important for us to be a member. It's an honor to be a core member of BOGA, and we'll do everything to promote our goals. Portugal in 2016 announced the commitment to reach the carbon neutrality until 2050. Last week, in COP27, our Prime Minister expressed our ambition to anticipate the target to 2045. Our roadmap for carbon neutrality to 2050 that we approved in July of 2019 sets Portugal's vision, trajectory and guidelines for policies and measures required to achieve the goal. This long-term strategy for carbon neutrality demonstrates various scenarios, and the best scenario is the one that show us that there is a relation between feasibility in terms of economic and technology, and also the reduce of emissions between 85% and 90% by 2050 compared to 2005. Aligned with the objectives and the goals of the roadmap for carbon neutrality, we approved a national energy and climate plan for 2030 with ambitious targets for greenhouse gases emissions, energy efficiency, and renewable energies. Renewable energy is crucial to ensure the effective pathway towards climate neutrality. Portugal already reached last year 60% of renewable share in electricity generation and is accelerating renewable energy uptake, focusing on solar to reach a target of 80% in 2026 and to reach 100% in 2050. Achieving carbon neutrality requires a real energy transformation. Of the 2 remaining coal-fired power plants, one has closed in late 2020 and the other closed by the end of November 2021, contributing to accelerate the decarbonization. Governments have the responsibility to give markets the correct signals for stability, enable concrete investments aligned with most ambitious climate goals. Phasing out harmful subsidies to fossil fuels and putting a price on carbon are key to send those signals. The phasing out of coal subsidies that began in 2018 was a key driver to end its use for power generation. Since then, Portugal extended this phase out to fuel, oil and natural gas. In December 21, Portugal published a national climate law that prohibits new exploration or concessions of fossil fuels in national territory. The law also established that all fossil fuel subsidies should end until 2030. This national climate law, by stating that the climate policy is planned taking into account the technological, political, economic, fiscal, social, energy, regional, European and international circumstances, reinforce the argument set out in BOGA's declaration, aiming at the need to achieve a progressive and well-managed out of oil and gas and to massively redirect investments to energy efficient, renewable energy and the strengthening and resilience of energy systems. Moreover, it's also worth highlighting in particular the alignment of BOGA's declaration in what relates to the prospection and exploitation of hydrocarbons and which stipulates the prohibition of granting new concessions for the prospection and exploitation of hydrocarbons in a national territory and their periodical reassessment in accordance with climate targets and objectives. Last but not least, we are aligning public finance flows with the objectives of Paris, in particular in the context of a green and against the background of science's clear message on the urgency of climate action. Thank you very much, and we hope that we continue to sign new partners to this goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, and I hope the audience also realizes that what you're witnessing here is a number of countries and subnational entities that are living up to their commitments in the Paris Agreement to take steps towards meeting the goals of Paris, and also of developed countries taking a first step. BOGA is very much an initiative that tries to frame the issue of both developed and developing countries. One of the key aims for the future years to analyze further what a common but differentiated approach to the phasing out of oil and gas and the end of production means. It's part of our analytical pledge to be the space where that happens, where that analysis is made, because we actually don't have it yet. To Laurence's point initially, that Paris didn't mention oil and gas, we are not there yet, unfortunately. But this is the group of countries committed to pushing that analysis forward, and that leads me to you, Stéphane, and to France. I mean, you are now also pushing towards ending public finance, as was mentioned initially. So how do you see BOGA's role in driving the discussion on moving finance from oil and gas towards renewables and other green solutions, and including also the conversation that is being touched upon here about maybe having oil and gas reflected in a cover decision at COP, please?
Thank you very much. And welcome to the club as core member, Minister. It's really wonderful to have you and to see BOGA expand in such a great way. In France, we've been, I can say we were early movers, because back in 2017, we passed a law saying no new concessions for oil and gas. And then came along COP26, and you may remember there was this declaration, the statement on international public support for the clean energy transition. And at the time, we were a little bit hesitant, I have to confess, before COP26, because we had a plan for phasing out export credits. We had a plan for 2025 for oil, and then 2035 for gas. And all this beautiful timetable was swept aside by the acceleration that we saw at COP26. So we decided to sign this statement, and then I'm happy to confirm that in the budget, the future 2023 fiscal bill, we have a provision that says no new export as of 1st of January 2023. And that covers the whole value chain, really. It covers oil and gas exploration, production, storage, transportation, refining activities, distribution of coal, of oil, of gas, and unabated thermal power station projects. So really the whole gamut, I would say. And also we've been working since then. We have not just worked amongst the French government, but really with the European Union in ECOFIN. Back in March, we pushed forward that definition and really embarked all the EU member states to have that same ambition. We've been very active in the E3F initiative, the Export Finance Initiative. And so in this context, you know, how can BOGA help? I think BOGA has a real added value in, first of all, in this context at UNFCCC. We know that there's this idea floating around of phasing down fossil fuels that was put forward by India. I think we should take them up on it. You know, if India's trying to deflect attention from coal, well, that's India's strategy, but I think we should make the most of that offer and push the phasing down at least, and hopefully the phasing out of all fossil fuels in a cover decision. So that should be very important. And it's all the more important it's all the more important that we saw incredible figures coming out of the fossilfuelregistry.org back in, at UNGA. They made some calculations and saw how many gigatons we have underground, and they calculated 3,500 gigatons are proven reserves under our feet and under the sea. And if you think that since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution we've burnt 2,500, it means that we have enough to really to burn ourselves to climate hell if we go on only with what is proven, what actually we know is underground. So the science is telling us 500 gigatons is the maximum we can burn if we want to stay in the limit of 1.5 degrees. The math is very simple. 6/7 of all proven reserves have to stay under our feet forever if we want to keep 1.5 degrees alive. So that's a message I think that that BOGA could really try and put across to all constituencies. Thanks.
Thank you very much to France for your continued leadership on this agenda. Last but not least, we have on the stage with us Governor Inslee from Washington State. And we're very excited to announce that Washington State will join BOGA as a new subnational core member.
Thank you.
So we'd love to transition away from oil, gas, and other fossil fuels, and how your state is advancing the vision of a clean energy, oil and gas. And
Thank you for this opportunity. First, actually, I have two announcements to make. That was the second announcement. The first announcement is that Trudy and I are expecting our 6th grandchild next week. So I want to thank everybody in this room for giving that grandchild a shot of the planet Earth not looking like Venus in the next several centuries. Thank you very, very much for what you're doing here. And this mission is actually imperative to accomplish that goal, as the leader from France so well articulated. Listen, I am very happy to announce that the Evergreen State, we are known as the Evergreen State. We're home of Microsoft, Boeing, Amazon, up in the northwest corner of the United States. And I'm proud to tell you, I can say with some credibility, my state, the Evergreen State, is moving faster, farther than any other place in the United States to eliminate the need for gas and oil. And I'm proud to be able to say that. And I'll tell you why I say that. It's not just out of pride of being governor of the Evergreen State. It's because it is necessary to explain why I bring any value to this coalition. I think it's a proper question to ask, why is it of value to this group for a state that does not produce any oil or gas to basically make a commitment that we're not going to drill for more oil and gas? And the reason is this. It is because we are accepting our moral responsibility to eliminate the need and the demand for oil and gas down to zero over the next several decades. That is a commitment we are making. It is a necessary one, and we are accomplishing it in multiple ways. We are accomplishing it by being able to tell you this, that we're proud to say that after 2035, you will not see more gas or diesel passenger vehicles in my state. That's the law of the state of Washington. We're going to accomplish that. I want to thank everybody for your assistance around the world to make that a worldwide policy. I'm proud to say that we have the most aggressive cap and invest law in the United States. It is the most aggressive, and I'm proudest of it, frankly, because it embodies environmental justice. We know this is a transition. We know this needs to be a just transition, and that's why I'm proud to say that 40% of all the revenue generated by this cap and invest bill will be dedicated to disadvantaged and disproportionately impacted communities, and 10% to the tribal communities of our state. That's an important thing as much as reducing our carbon emissions. I'm proud to say in the last week, our Building Code Council allowed us to become the first state in the United States to effectuate a rule that starting next year, not 2050, next year, every building in the state of Washington will have to be built with a heat pump to essentially reduce and eliminate the need for fossil fuel gas. I'm proud of that, and it's the first state in the United States to be able to do that. So the value we bring is to show that we want to eliminate the need and the demand for that which must remain in the ground. Look, we fundamentally believe this. In Washington, we think there are things that should be above ground, and there's some things that should be below ground. Apples, we grow the best apples in the United States. Wheat, we grow the best wine in the United States, okay? Asparagus, potatoes, they belong above ground. Oil and gas belongs below ground. That's what we believe in the United States. And I'll tell you why. I do think the fundamental belief we have that allows our state to lead in this regard is that we understand the transition here. We understand that the ultimate energy source, there's probably a Latin phrase to that, energetica ultima or something like that. But basically it means that the ultimate energy source is not below our ground, it's above our shoulders. It's our intellectual capability of creativity and innovation. And it's not really just solar or wind or batteries or anything else. It's our power of innovation. And we believe it is unlimited in the Evergreen State. We're going to use it. I'm glad to join you in this great cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor. And we have a few more minutes left of this session. We have roaming mics, and if there are questions or comments from the audience, I'd like to open up for a few interventions. We have a question right here and over there. If we start here, and if you can give the mic to the gentleman in the row in the middle here, please, sir.
Hi there, my name is Patrick Greenfield. I'm a reporter with The Guardian. I just wanted to know if Costa Rica is still an active member of the alliance. They're a noticeable absentee here and they're a founding member. What's the latest on that?
You should really ask the Costa Rican minister about that. It's our understanding that they are facing some resource constraints and therefore couldn't be present, but we've met with the minister this week and they are still absolutely in the alliance. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? There we go. Joe Lowe from Climate Home News. I'd like to ask Governor Inslee if he has spoken to the US government about their position on the phase out of fossil fuels in the cover text, and if he would urge them to support the phase out of fossil fuels or the phase down, or what your view is. Thanks.
I have not had any recent discussions about that. I encourage you to ask our federal partners in this regard. But obviously the Inflation Reduction Act is enormously effective in reducing climate change gases. It is enormously effective by giving American consumers choices of non-fossil fuel energy. Look, we are selling electric cars in my state like pancakes, like hotcakes. The list is now long. My son's frustrated because he's been on a list to get a Ford 150 electric pickup because he's a carpenter. He wants to carry it around with a zero-emitting pickup, but it's a long waiting list. So this bill is going to help us dramatically give consumers non-fossil fuels-based options. Our charging infrastructure, this bill is going to help, as well as the infrastructure bill. And my state's doing our part. And by the way, if I may, just for a moment, we and the minister from Quebec, we're introduced as subnationals. That's a bunch of malarkey. We're supranationals. We're supranationals because we can go further and faster than the federal government. That's what we're doing. The federal government is building the first floor of a two-floor building. We're putting the second floor on. We're going to get this job done.
Thank you, Governor. The lady in the corner here. And then we also had a question from a lady right there.
Hello, my name is Ina Maria. And I come from, sorry, it's cold here. Yeah. So I wanted to actually make more of a statement to Madame la Ministre, because you were talking about if Senegal wants to develop its gas, you know, they should, or maybe it is me that misunderstood. But for me personally, I feel that as an African, in most cases when it comes to these projects, there is not much community engagement, so we never really know about it. And my recommendations would be that if you really want to support the people, including the community, not only the government, but also everyone that is in the space, since we share one carbon budget, it would be to really just skip the gas all in all and just really just focus on investing in renewable energies, like stop investing in fossil fuel energies, because for us it really means our waters are being poisoned. It is really impacting our people in a very bad way. But at the same time, it is also impacting the people in Europe right now, because just like we saw, the rivers are drying out. Even in Canada, the forests are being ravished by wildfires. So these are all the effects of actually bringing up this. So I am here to talk as a friend. And then to my Monsieur le Ministre de la France, I would like to know what is going to happen to the to ECOP, because I think it is also a problem. It is a big elephant in the room that is actually impacting people already in Uganda. And like I say, you know, moi je suis un ami de la France et du Canada aussi. But I come from Namibia. As a concerned citizen of the world, I'd like to know what are we going to do to really make a change for everyone and not only for the global north, because I think it's time we people from the global north and the global south come together to really create change for everyone and not only for the few. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. Quick reaction from France, and then we had a lady in the middle there. Yes.
Maybe first of all, we mentioned Senegal, and indeed Senegal has gas, but it has a lot of potential in renewable energies, and this is why we've been talking with Senegal to establish what we call the JETP, a Just Energy Transition Partnership. We're in discussions with them, and I know there is a lot of interest on the part of Senegal to develop these renewable energies. They've started doing so, and there is much potential to do some more. You mentioned the Ugandan project. All I can say is it's a private company that's doing it. The French government will not guarantee any project as part of our new policy for export credits.
Thank you very much, Stefan. We have time for one more question. We have a second panel coming right up in 1 minute that's operating, and I'm sure she will try, as I did, to keep time at the end for a few questions and comments. So keep your firepower until we reach the end of the next panel. Yes, please.
Hello. Shadia Nasrallah from Reuters news agency. I'd be interested to hear more about your efforts to attract more and maybe, you know, more big hitter members to the group, because it seems like it might be a bit frustrating that there haven't been more countries potentially with a bit more production of oil and gas joining. I'd be grateful if you could tell us a little bit about that and your level of frustration in this regard. And also, we have a lot of, especially countries here, that say they need to develop oil and gas to get the money in to finance their transition to renewables, especially given that other finances at least not in the quantities required. What would you say to them? Thanks.
Now, this is not a press conference. This is a side event where we also want to talk to civil society and move forward on the BOGA agenda. And we have a second panel coming that is actually focusing on some of the questions you're asking. So I would kindly ask you to keep your firepower dry also as a journalist, and maybe talk to us afterwards. And I'd want, if there's anyone from civil society, not journalists, who want to ask a question, I'd love to have one more before we segue into the next panel. Yes, right here in the first.
I'm not sure about civil society. I'm Bobby Banerjee. I'm a professor of management at Bayes Business School, London. My sister here talked about elephant in the room. I'm hearing a lot about stuff about electric cars. The elephant in the room is this: electric cars is not going to save the planet. Because the end of the supply chain for a Tesla is the 10-year-old kid in the Congo picking up cobalt with a pickaxe. So the more, all the stuff, the materials we are needing for this is essentially being extracted from the developing countries under horrendous conditions. So suddenly to have this magic bullet of electric cars saving the planet is not going to take us anywhere.
Thank you very much for that comment. And with that, we will leave the stage to Sean and the next panel. And do you want me to call up the next panelist, Sean, or will you take care of that? Then you come and take over the chair.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Sian Bradley. I'm the head of the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance Secretariat. And it's a pleasure to introduce to you all our second panel, which will really be focusing on that call from the UN Secretary General for solidarity at the beginning of COP. How can BOGA support a just transition, and what are the challenges that developing countries are facing in coming into the conversation So we have an incredible panel to share their perspectives, a panel that was actually growing even just until the last couple of minutes with a few surprise announcements. So if I can be joined on the stage by Minister Eamon Ryan from Ireland, Minister Diego Pardo, Minister for Energy, Chile, and I believe we may have the Environment Minister joining us as well. Minister Seve Painu, Minister of Finance and Climate from Tuvalu. Satyendra Prasad, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Fiji to the United Nations, who I think may be running in from another meeting, but will be with us in a moment. And then Ali Mohammed, Senior Advisor on Climate Change, Office of the President, Kenya. And finally, completing the lineup, Christy Ullman, President of the Sequoia Foundation. Incredible. So we have 6, potentially, Minister Pardo, 7 speakers joining us. Still only 40 minutes or so till the end of the event. Several announcements, a lot to get through, and I really want to make sure that there's a chance to bring in all of our civil society partners for discussion, as well as the press, because this moment today is as much theirs as it is ours. So we want to have that moment for engagement. So I will ask all of our panelists to keep their opening remarks brief. We each have sort of 2 to 3 minutes, and we'll keep it on point, and then we'll open up the floor and have a real conversation. And in a change to the original schedule, we will begin with Minister Ryan, because you are very, very busy and have to probably run off and leave us in about 20 minutes. So Minister Ryan, I'll hand straight over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I might have to leave in about 10 minutes, sorry. It's just ministerial involvement to negotiations is starting to pick up, so apologies for that. But I'm very glad and honoured to be here for the second time. We were here last year in a really, I think, a hugely important and significant event, and we need to continue. Can I just 2 or 3 points if I can? Firstly, what I said last year, what I think still holds, and in my mind it goes back to a lot of the analysis that the likes of Bill McKibben and others have made, that if we keep trying to solve this problem just on the demand side, concentrating all the focus on the people, are you using oil and gas? Have you got the right cooker? Have you got the right car? It won't work. We need to start at the source of the problem, the start of the pipeline, the wellhead, the coal mine, rather than always on the consumer. We need to do both, but for too long it was the market will deliver, the consumer has the responsibility, and we didn't address the supply end of it. And that's why I think Beyond Oil and Gas is so important, because it shifts the narrative towards this change. Second, just broad point. I think a lot of people will maybe look, particularly to Europe, I'm a member of the European Energy Council, and say, oh, well, Europe has given up on its climate ambitions because in response to the war, it's looking for gas everywhere. It's reopened coal plants, and it shows that security trumps climate. I don't believe that to be true. I think there is an immediate reality, as any energy minister will tell you, when you face the prospect of not being able to keep the lights on, keep the factories open, you have a responsibility to your people to do that. But do not misread or do not misjudge what's happening in Europe, and I believe the rest of the world. What is happening because of this war, in my mind, is going to be an acceleration on the rollout and the investment and the delivery of renewable power as the alternative. For while we know we have to in Europe close that gap of going from 40% Russian gas down to 10% now, closing that gap cannot be done or will not be done in my mind in a way that sees us going beyond our climate targets. With Frans Timmermans yesterday doubling down on our Fit for 55, now Fit for 57 legislation, is where the real intent is. And I believe what you will see, what people will see in the accelerated permitting systems, the increased investment, and the real political imperative towards renewables as the only secure alternative to fossil fuels. That is going to be the lasting legacy of this war. And lastly, I'd say, just third point, and this goes back to Ireland. So we have our sea area 7 times our land area. We don't have any oil and gas on shore. We've committed not to go offshore for oil and gas, not to explore, not to issue new contracts. Because doing so is 100 to 1 against BET, which is lunacy. It costs 100 million euros every time to just go out and drill. The odds of finding it are 50, 60 to 1. The alternative, particularly now, there was, as well as this event today, the event yesterday, the Global Wind Energy Alliance, someone described it as the Olympics, or like the Winter Olympics of offshore wind yesterday, where countries ministers were vying with each other to say, we're the first, we're going to be the biggest, we will be the best. Every single minister at that meeting yesterday meant it. And that's the other supply side change that's occurring. The likes of offshore wind, the likes of solar at scale is coming all over the world. The scaling up of the supply chain to deliver it is beyond compare, but that's where the money needs to go. That's where that 4 trillion in profits that the oil and gas industry are currently getting at the moment, we need to reallocate that finance for the peace project in our time, the investment in that solar and wind alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Ryan. Obviously, you were on stage with us last year, you're on stage with us again this year, and thank you for Ireland's continued support for the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance. So, from a familiar face to a new one, Minister Pardo, over to you.
Thank you. So, here comes our Environment Minister. She's going to join us on the stage. Oh,
Marsha, take a seat.
You can sit here.
Join us.
Busy days, as you may see. But so we don't come from a producing country. So why are we sitting here? And I think we can say a little about what comes beyond oil and gas from a demand-side country. And this needs to address first what are the uses we're giving to oil and gas these days. So oil and gas is used in Chile mainly for 2 uses. We use it as a backup for generating electricity, and of course you use it for transport, right? And you may say, okay, so you just put more renewables in and electrify the transportation with electric cars, but not so fast. We have been rather successful in putting out of the energy matrix fossil fuels, but the part that it's leaving is the one that is harder to take out, because it's the part that provides flexibility to the energy matrix. And I don't know if you are familiar with these issues, but wind and solar, we're very good at installing solar panels and windmills, but wind and solar, they're variable, and they just don't have the ability to be flexible and meet demands and bring inertia to the system. So we need to come up with different things. And on the transport side, we are doing a lot in electrifying transportation. We have a very ambitious program on that regard, but electric cars take a lot to charge, and batteries are heavy. So there are some industries in which it just does not work, and we need to find something else. Probable hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, something on that side. So what's beyond oil and gas, it's less proven technologies that provide flexibility for the energy system, and synthetic fuels that need a lot of work to be done. And the less proven technologies that provide flexibility for the energy matrix, we have a very hard task ahead of finding ways of financing those infrastructure. It's not easy to find funding for those infrastructure because the finance system is made for proven technologies and not for the ones that are not yet as proven. So that's one challenge. And the other challenge is that we need to build a certification system, a trading system for this synthetic fuel economy. And for those two big challenges, finding financing mechanisms that are well equipped to less proven technologies, and also to find a proper certification and trading system for synthetic fuels, we need help. And that's why, and I don't know if you wanted to announce it or I do it, but we will be joining BOGA as friends, and I hope you guys help us. This is a difficult task, especially for a small country, and I hope soon enough we will be upgrading our membership, and not only upgrading it, but bringing some of our Latin American neighbors along. So with that, I will leave it to Maisa, who is also the responsible of this announcement. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Diego, for giving me the opportunity to also sit here and to celebrate that Chile is going to be part of Friends of Beyond Oil and Gas. And as the Environment Minister, this is my best friend. He needs to be my best friend because Chile is committed to climate action. We have a climate change law that says that Chile is going to be carbon neutral at the latest by 2050 and resilient to the adverse effects of climate change. This will imply that Chile is going through an energy transition that has to be just. We want to accelerate our energy transition, and of course, the most important role in this and our carbon neutrality commitment is the energy sector. So that's why we need to be very good friends. I will make sure that we know where the north is and that we do not derail from that path. And I sincerely hope that we can soon be more than just friends from BOGA. Thank you very much.
Minister Pardo, Minister Roca, welcome to the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance family. And yeah, as a friend, we look forward to welcoming you into the membership as well in due course, shortly, I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to the Pacific now. Minister Painu, over to you.
Talofa and good afternoon, friends. Tuvalu and the Pacific Islands actually living the climate change effect. We are at the front line. It is real for us. You know, when I hear the gentleman from France in the earlier panel saying that if we burn the next 500 gigatons of oil and gas, we then overshoot the 1.5. That is really scary. Scary for us, low-lying atoll nations, small states like my country, Tuvalu. We are literally being inundated and submerged by sea level rising. So any notion of overshooting that 1.5 target, that's our survival. We'll be wiped out from the face of the earth. So that's our predicament, and that's our context. And that's why I am so happy and pleased to be part of this dialogue with the BOGA Alliance. And we certainly support the transitioning away from fossil fuels as part of our effort to achieve that 1.5 target. So I am also pleased to announce that Tuvalu would like to become a member of the BOGA Alliance. Tuvalu doesn't have any oil and gas reserves, so we do not have that value adding to the alliance in terms of reducing our fossil fuel production. However, we have huge moral support we can bring to the alliance. I have a big voice. We can make a lot of noises and promote and escalate the objectives of the BOGA Alliance. I am also pleased to mention that Tuvalu is supporting the call for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. I think this is a natural and a logical step following the BOGA, to have an international framework to have this discussion on commitments and targets towards phasing out of fossil fuels from this earth. So we welcome friends, not only in terms of the BOGA Alliance, but also in terms of this fossil fuel treaty. We welcome you on board for this journey to phase out fossil fuel. Our moral support and our voices will contribute to the call to send fossil fuels to their tomb, to where they belong. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Minister Paina. So, Paina, that is one friend confirmed, one friend incoming, and Ambassador Prasad, just in time. I'll hand the floor to you.
Thank you. Better late than never. And thank you very much, Minister. And Fiji is also happily announcing its membership of the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance. We are very pleased to be part of in fine company of everyone on the table, and of course with our neighbors Tuvalu. And needless to say that if you wake up in the small states of the Pacific Islands after Catastrophe 5, cyclone has hit your country, the day after looks like a war zone, and you do not know where to start from. Some of us who have woken up on many such, not woken up because you don't sleep the night before, but when we look at the catastrophes before us, you do think that it perhaps, or you feel as if carbon, oil and gas have been weaponized and have been strategically targeted onto small island states with such devastating accuracy and with such devastating impact on human lives and their livelihoods. And so it is time to bring an end to this weapon of destruction. We cannot go around this. For small states of the Pacific, and with Fiji, we so much believe in just transition. We are fully, with all efforts and understand that transition takes time. We urge transitions to be done, we speed it up dramatically, We ask those who use global conferences and these global negotiations, such as the UNFCCC process, to prolong needlessly the time taken for just transition, to please also understand our call for just existence. Both of them are worthy both of them are worthy of global solidarity. Fiji has nothing against oil and gas industry. It is made up of people. It is owned by individuals. It is in some cases owned by governments as well. These are people who have grandparents. These are people who have grandchildren. And we urge them to think as we do, that we all need to do our fair share for the planet, for humanity, and for generations that will follow. Everyone in the oil and gas sector have grandparents who may have suffered from breathing-related problems as a consequence of pollution. Everyone working in the oil and gas sector would be thinking about the planet that they are bequeathing to their children and grandchildren that will follow. And they are human beings like us. So we are very happy to celebrate this moment. We look forward to as many countries as possible joining this alliance, and we hope that just transition and just existence can both have the same level of urgency that they deserve. Thank you very much.
Incredible, and welcome Fiji to the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance. So that's an incredibly strong call there from the Pacific, a strong message. We are, of course, in an African COP, so I'm delighted to hand over next to Ali Mohammed. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Sean, and good afternoon all. I come from Kenya, and as many of you will probably know, Kenya and the rest of the Horn of Africa is currently going through one of the worst droughts in 40 years. So similar to our island colleagues, we are really in the front line of climate impacts and climate change. Of course, that's not new to people attending here at the COP. Impacts are happening everywhere in developing and developing world. And we know the causes. It's because of the accumulation of greenhouse gases. And of course, IPCC and scientists have told us over and over again where the greenhouse gases are coming from. They're coming from largely from fossil fuels. And 30 years since we signed onto the UNFCCC, I mean, it's an indictment on all of us that we are shying away from talking about fossil fuels. So I commend BOGA and the government of Denmark for this bold initiative of starting this alliance. And I want to confirm that today here, Kenya, we want to become friend of BOGA. Kenya is not a major producer. It's not a producer of oil and gas or fossil fuels. But we have proven deposits of coal, commercial deposits of oil and gas. But over the years, the Kenya government has taken deliberate choice to go renewables. 93% of our electricity is renewables. We are very big in geothermal, as I suppose many know. We are doing very well on wind. We have the largest wind farms in Africa, and our solar systems are also expanding. So this is a deliberate choice that the country has done, and we want to continue on that path. Recently, we had a very successful election, and President William Ruto was elected, has written in international press as well as spoken loudly about weaning ourselves off the addiction to fossil fuel. And he continues to push that agenda, and that is the direction that Kenya is taking. One of the first acts that the new president of Kenya has taken was to remove the subsidies on pump fuel because of the pressure it has on our budgets and because of the problem it continues to put on us on debt. And so we are deliberately moving away from fossil fuel as a country and as a government. However, this deliberate action and these alternative choices requires partnership, it requires support. And therefore, I sit here to say that we are determined to continue on the alternative path, because really that's the future, but we require partnerships, we require friends, and we require investments so that we succeed together in addressing this big challenge. Thank you very much.
So there you go, the first African nation signaling its intent to come into BOGA. That's huge. Thank you so much, Ali, for joining us today and bringing that message. And so, 4 new friends, incoming members, and finally, one final announcement and a few words from Kirsty Ullman. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Sean, our fearless leader for the BOGA Secretariat. Thank you to Denmark and Costa Rica for your leadership. Sometimes they put the money at the beginning of these events, but today this is the cliffhanger, so the money's at the end of the event. I'm Kirsty Ullman, I'm president of Sequoia Climate Foundation. We're proud to be supporters of the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance. You can see how much a first mover makes space, diplomatic space for others to come in. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your leadership around the table. BOGA's coming in at a really critical time to show high ambition. Countries are facing compounding crises, climate, food, energy, security, on top of the climate impacts that we've heard today. This is an inflection point for their energy and economic futures. It's a pivotal moment for place-based efforts to plan and implement a transition away from oil and gas and towards clean energy that is both just and equitable. Sequoia, along with a group of our philanthropic partners, came together on Friday to make an announcement where we provided a large sum of money to support countries who are entering in their equitable and just transition. Now, I will say that it is not the amount of money that developed countries have pledged to developing countries. It's not meant to fill that gap, but it is meant to provide a step change in catalytic support and open a window for countries to put in place plans for their transition away from fossil fuels. Part of that commitment will be a $10 million commitment to the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance and the countries who are putting in place those important plans and are initiating the transition away from oil and gas. I'm going to pause here for a round of applause. Now, we know 10 million in this context is not a lot. We know this is just an initial early seed fund to get some momentum going, to provide some catalytic support so others can see the momentum and so real private and public sector finance can come in and help support this transition. We look forward to continuing this partnership and scaling both our philanthropic support and support. We won't let up pressure both on developed countries and public and private finance to continue to provide that support. And we will also provide support to BOGA members who are showing ambition, in particular developing country producers, so that they have access to resources to support the planning and groundwork that will be required to design and implement a future beyond oil and gas. Like many of you, I was struck by the Secretary General's remarks at the beginning of COP that we must cooperate or perish. And I think this is a great example of countries coming together to cooperate. We know that we have to make commitments and implementation, and that will be the hallmark of years to come. So thank you, countries and supranationals around the table, for your leadership.
Thank you so much, Kirsty. So that is the first BOGA fund for developing countries. Seed funding, initial 10 million, operational early next year, and further details coming soon. And on behalf of the Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance, I should also just say a huge thank you to Sequoia and to our philanthropic funders for making this possible. Thank you. So I want to take one round of questions quickly. We do have to wrap up at 2:45, but I want to get one round in really quickly, and then I'm going to bring Ambassador Christensen back up to the floor to close the event. So if I can have hands up. I know there are a few questions that went unanswered before. If we don't come to you in this round, please reach out to us afterwards. So hands up, and yeah, quick, concise questions. The lady in the white jacket there, please. And any others, please signal at me now.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Ana Carolina González from the Natural Resource Governance Institute. And this is really good news, and especially as we need to mobilize additional resources to fund energy transition pathways in resource-rich countries that heavily depend on oil and gas. How are you considering and anticipating include the voices of civil society in these conversations going forward, especially in developing countries and considering the most affected and vulnerable communities in those resource-rich countries?
Thank you. And there was one more over there, and then we'll cut it there because we do have to wrap on time.
Yes, thank you. Dan Belusa, I'm from an NGO network in Denmark called the 92 Group. I'd like to hear how the cooperation, if they would also resolve in a cooperation to end fossil fuel investments with like agenda Article 21C, like some other way of ending fossil investments from private sectors, not just from governments.
Thank you. So 2 questions there. If anyone on the panel has quick remarks, 30 seconds, please feel free to take those, and then I'll offer a few very quick remarks on them. It could be... Come up.
I can take a little bit on the civil society side and share a little bit of what we are doing. When we are kind of, I was just talking about the importance of synthetic fuels. What we are doing right now, we had a national strategy that it's just focused on the productive output, and we are trying to bring civil society along in order to understand how we have to build this huge infrastructure related to the synthetic fuel industry. And I will just give you a couple of examples. I think we are running out of time, but we can talk later. For example, in the GH2 industry, there will need to be built desalination facilities. We're talking with local communities. How can we use these desalination facilities in order to also bring water to cities, just residential service of water, and also how can we use also this infrastructure to avoid the migration of the agriculture sector in the parts of the north part of Chile that's just getting drier and drier. Maybe we can work on that. So we're focusing especially on how can we use this big infrastructure for other uses that the communities involved in this process are needed. That's what we are doing, at least in Chile. I don't know if that answers your question.
I don't think there are any other remarks here, and we're running out of time. We're going to have to finish in 1 minute. So if unless there's any burning comments, we'll leave it there and hand over to Thomas. Everyone's happy. Or Christy, did you want to say something quickly?
I'll just say quickly that in the philanthropic sector, we work really hard to work across government, policymakers, civil society, industry. That is a convening power that we have, and we want to make sure everybody's voice is at the table. So that equitable and just transition piece is something that we really work hard to bring to the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. BOGA is built on a broad coalition of actors, civil society, many of the organizers around you and in front of you, Anna. So yeah, grab them and speak afterwards. But absolutely, that engagement is core. There's no such thing as a just transition without meaningful involvement of civil society. So yes, absolutely. With that in mind, friends, funding, congratulations, and thank you all for being with us today. If you stay on stage 2 seconds, and Ambassador Christiansen is just going to say some final closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. And with this, we have now 19 members of the BOGA family, up from 14 when we started this session. We have 14 governments and 5 subnationals that span, I think, all continents of the planet now. So thank you all for your incredible leadership. The question was asked previously about new members, and I think this panel has given part of the answer. I also think the Sequoia Foundation's very generous offer of $10 million in support for technical assistance is part of the answer to how to engage African countries and other countries that want to understand their pathway away from oil and gas dependency and production. It is an open offer for those who are serious to engage with us. to come and get support for understanding your pathway away from being a production country to exploring other opportunities for economic growth and social development. But I would also encourage all of you here, as we are building this BOGA alliance also into a political, economic and social movement, to help us engage major producers on this question. We've heard about the conversation of bringing this up in the negotiations, but this goes way beyond the negotiations. This is about shifting 150 or 200 years of fossil fuel dependence in the global economy. It's not an easy task. It is one of the most difficult ones that we face as a global society. But I do think everyone in this room could be an agent of that change. So with that, we really want to thank you all for coming and hope to see you next year when we hopefully have many more members of this alliance, but also in the next few days around COP, where we hopefully can give more fuel and fire to this agenda. Thank you very much.
We should, shouldn't we? Where's Kat? Flo, can you get Flo for a family cat for a photo?